we are not autonomous rational beings. We don't just come up with our own style. We don't just come up with our own ideas. So much of what we do and buy and wear and think comes from external influence.
Well, welcome to another episode of the Guy Gamer Vlog. This week, we're talking about resources. I know a lot of folks are trying to figure out next steps, best practices in a season where we're all just at home and there's less work to do. I mean, we're still working, but there's just less of it. It's a great time to study. It's a great time to read, to really take advantage of the season and learn as much as you can. So, Guy, what are some of your, if you had to recommend books to read during this season to jumpstart a career or to get you prepared for when this season ends, what would those books be?
So first, the Bible.
Yes.
You're probably reading that less than you should already, but
Dang!
I mean, I know I am.
Word.
I'm being honest, right?
And on that note, that's the episode.
Today we're gonna go
read the Bible.
Yeah. Of course, the Bible. You know, it's interesting. We have more time, just in general, right? We have no commute now, so that's freeing up a lot more time. Not just the time that you're in your car, but getting ready every day and all of those things. It frees up a lot more time, so we have the availability to spend more time on those things. And I say this pretty frequently anyway. Everyone has the same 24 hours in a day. We can't. The thing about time is that we can't buy more. So time doesn't have preferences on age or race or location. We're all in the same boat when it comes to that. And so using our time wisely is important. Everyone has the same 24 hours, so use it wisely. And so that's why I say there's always more time for the Bible, for sure. The next book that I would recommend, just from a mindset standpoint, is Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. And what I like about that book is that it's a massive paradigm shift. And paradigm shift, if you've ever listened to or read any Stephen Covey stuff, 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, is looking at things from a different angle and recognizing that what things look like from where you sit right now may be entirely different from the way that somebody else sees it. And so you will see by reading that book the way that investors in general look at leveraging money, look at wealth in general, look at your own personal home, and it shapes and changes how you think about things. And I think one of the things that was really impactful for me at a young age was to understand that my home that I lived in is not an investment. It's a liability.
Right, yeah.
And part of the American dream is to buy a house, right? And as a real estate guy, for me, it's like that is part of the American dream. I want people to experience that, and I love being a part of helping them do that. But the house that you live in is a liability. It's not an investment. Yes, it grows in value over time, but that's appreciation, and that's going to happen regardless. It's an investment doesn't cost you money. And if you're living in a house, you're paying the mortgage, and so that's an expense, which makes that purchase a liability purchase as opposed to an investment purchase. An investment should pay for itself. And so you're not basing the value of that investment on appreciation. You're not basing it on market conditions necessarily. You're basing it on how it performs from a balance sheet standpoint. So on a real basic level, when you borrow money to buy a rental property, someone else pays that money off. When you borrow money and get a mortgage for the house that you live in, you pay that off. Two totally different
Yeah.
things. One of them costs you money. One of them is being paid for by someone else, and you're realizing the benefit of that person paying off the mortgage that you borrowed, and you're at a net zero. You didn't spend any money to make that happen.
I was listening to the author of that book, Robert Kiyosaki. He was talking about the flow of cash, and he said the difference between an asset and a liability is the relationship between a noun and a verb. The noun being the house, the verb being cash flow. If the cash is flowing away from you, it's a liability.
Yeah.
If the cash is flowing to you, it's an asset.
Yeah.
So when you're talking about rental properties, if a person's goal is to build wealth, then the idea, if you're going to get into real estate, isn't just to buy a house for yourself, but buy a house for somebody else to pay for too. So if you're gonna do it, buy an investment property, and then worry about the house you live in later. If your goal is to generate cash flow.
Yeah. And one of the Rich Dad Poor Dad principles that you can agree with or disagree with. This isn't something that I necessarily adhere to, but I recognize the logic behind it. And that is that you can limit your liabilities by renting the house that you live in, because then you're not responsible for anything other than the rent itself, so the repairs, et cetera, and buy a house that you rent out, because that builds wealth. The house you live in does not build wealth, and so you can maximize your wealth building by doing that. You can also do that by buying a duplex or a house with an extra unit in the back that you can rent out, so that it's generating income as well. So you're limiting the liability, but those are all pieces that will allow you to do that and shift from a liability to an investment. And I think that as you read through that book, you'll start to see more and more of how you can think through that lens and really see things differently from an investment to a liability standpoint.
So just so you all know, we will have the links for where you can purchase these books, and even more information on the authors in the description below. And while you're looking at that, go ahead and smash the like button, hit the subscribe button and the little bell to get notifications. It helps with the algorithm a lot when you like this video, so more people see it. YouTube will promote it, so it's really helpful. So Rich Dad Poor Dad, give us another one. What's another book to round out the day?
Another one that I really like right now, and I'm an audiobook guy, so I've got a whole library of Audible that I listen to, and sometimes I go back and listen to sections and parts of it again, or chapters again, just to kind of refresh that in my mind. But one of them is Invisible Influence, and that one is more of I guess that one's probably a sort of a mindset type of book as well, but from a different angle, I guess. And that one is really recognizing that we are not autonomous, rational beings. We don't just come up with our own style. We don't just come up with our own ideas. So much of what we do and buy and wear and think comes from external influences, whether that's our families, our friends, the news, whatever. And so that's, again, why so frequently I talk about who you surround yourself with, and if they're able to help catapult you forward, or if they're going to be someone you are having to pull along or whatever. And so, and you should have both of those, but I think making sure that the people around you that are shaping how you think are people who are helping you to think bigger and broader and more true. And Invisible Influence will help you think about that from the standpoint of why you make decisions, from a psychological standpoint in terms of that influence. And so I think it's a helpful book for that, for sure.
So there you have it. There's a couple books for you to read. Again, the links are in the description below. Check those out, and tune in next week for another episode of the Guy Gamer Vlog.
Yeah. See you then.